Hi you guys, it's Lisa. Thank you for stopping at my channel. Today I have an exciting thing for you. We're doing a blog hop for Shawn Petite, and today we're supposed to use this stencil that is called Falling Leaves. I'm using some collage papers on my MDF board, and my MDF board is 8 by 10. Here I'm going to use this fall napkin for some of my background, and I have a ton of stencils from Shawn, and when I use them I'll let you know the names, and I'll have them in the description below so that you can look for those in Shawn's store and get your hands on some. Okay, let's get started. So I'm putting down my matte medium, and I'm going to put down my background papers as I've done many times before. If you watch my channel, I know that's usually how I start, and it's just a good way to get going and let the creative juices start flowing. Only thing I know is that I'm supposed to use this Falling Leaves Stencil by Shawn Petite, and not a problem. As you can see, mine is cut in half, and the reason it's cut in half is because I use it so much. I use it in my workshops, and I wanted my students to be able to go ahead and use it 2 at a time. So of course I haven't been doing any hands-on workshops because of what's going on in the world with this virus, but I did do an online workshop, and I'll tell you more about that in the end if you're interested in something like that. So back to the piece. Just has some old vintage paper that I'm sticking down to my MDF board, and like I said, it's 8 by 10 and I think 3/4 inch thick. And I had put some spray paint on the back so that it is coated on the back. It's just easier for when we're going to put our information on the back of the piece. It looks nice and clean. Here is a fall napkin that I wanted to include on my piece, and I'm just going ahead and putting that on with my matte medium also. And I'm not being very careful, which of course you know we should be very careful. And look, I ripped a hole right in the middle of it. Oh well, that happens, so be careful if you're going to follow along and do this with me, because the napkins are very fragile, as you know. I was going to cover it back up, and I thought, nope, I'm just going to leave it alone, add some cool texture to the background. Now everything is dry, and I grabbed a whole bunch of paints out of my stash, and I'm going to push this background a little bit back with my gesso, and I have just a clean dry brush here, and I'm using Liquitex gesso, going ahead and just giving that background a little calmness, as I like to call it. It just was pretty bright and noticeable, and I wanted to give it a little calmness and add a little bit of paint. I am adding a little bit of this blue paint, and it is a chalk paint, and it's called Slate Gray by Art Minds. Just using a dry brush, going ahead, and I'm creating my sky for my piece, and I'm leaving a little bit of white to resemble some clouds. Now I want to tell you about the inspiration that I got for this piece, and it was just me sitting outside and looking at my yard, and that's how the inspiration came. Here I'm going to use some yellow, and I've got all the paints on my desk, so I'm going ahead and letting you know this is also a chalk paint by Folk Art Home Decor, and this color is Vintage Mustard. Now I'm just using a sea sponge and picking up a little bit of that paint, and then I'm going ahead with my paper towel and picking up some of the paint off my piece. I didn't want it to be really, really noticeable, but I just wanted the yellow there as the yellow sunshine was still falling down on my yard. Now here you see me several times. I'm using up that paint from my little plastic palette there, and I'm going ahead and putting it in my art journal book. I like to show that because sometimes we get used to wasting our paint, and I try not to, and that's why I have so many art journal pages started, is because I keep using up my paint that way. Now here's another stencil from Shawn, and this one is called Door One Large. I wanted to use that brick line of bricks at the top there, and I'm going to create a brick fence, and I'm using my heavy gesso, which you can see is pretty empty, and a plastic palette knife. And I'm going to be real careful and try and do another layer. And I believe on my piece I have 5 rows of this brick. So I used some painter's tape and just taped off part of the stencil so that it wouldn't seep through, and I'll have to go back to my sink and wash this off, and it's going to take a lot of drying. Now that's very wet there on the top, so I'm going to work on the bottom part while that dries so I can keep moving on. I chose 3 colors of paint. Of course, I have my Dina Wakley Cheddar, which I use all the time. And I have 2 paints by Stamperia, and one is Biscotto and the other is Cappuccino. And then I went back and put in a little of that vintage mustard. So I've got a lot of different fall colors working there at the bottom. And I'm just using a dry brush and going over the bottom there and just creating a base for my brick wall to be placed upon, and getting rid of that paint on my art journal pages again. So this needs to dry a bit, and I wanted to add just a touch of red to my ground there because I have a lot of red leaves in my yard right now, and they are just beautiful, beautiful color. And this is Santa red, and it's by Deco Art. And I just wanted to put a little bit down there, and as you can see, I had a little bit too much, but I went ahead and used my art journal to get rid of that paint, went back with a little tiny touch of brown, and got it the way that I loved it. So now this has to dry before we go on to the next step. And I believe I'm going to put some more bricks on the upper portion. Moving some of the stuff out of my way, going back with my heavy gesso, and the heavy gesso that I really love and use quite a bit is by Liquitex, and I will link it below for you if you're interested in that product. As you can see, I use it a lot. So I did pick up some of that heavy gesso on the back of that stencil, and it gave a really cool texture to the bricks, so I wasn't going to worry about it too terrible much, but I'm not going to let that piece of stencil fall back on the bricks above where I'm working here. At the end, you'll understand what I'm doing. I thought maybe I could go ahead and be brave and put that last row of bricks in, but I couldn't chance it. I went ahead and washed my stencil, and now we're going to work on the portion with the Falling Leaves Stencil. Here's the samples from that online class that I was telling you about, and it's all about creating backgrounds with mixed media products and different techniques. So I'll link the class below for you if you're interested. You make 12 artist trading cards, and you have 12 different techniques there. So it's quite fun, and it's something that you can keep in your stash just like your paints and your stencils. You'll always have that video. Okay, so I'm going over my colored bottom there with some deco art in bittersweet chocolate paint. And I'm doing a reverse stencil technique with Shawn's Falling Leaves Stencil and a baby wipe. And I really, really like this technique. It leaves an amazing texture and a beautiful, beautiful pattern showing through all of those colors that I had underneath that brown when I put on there. So really, really fun. And I just kept going on and on until I got it the way I liked it. Now also save your baby wipes when you're picking up all this color, because you can use those for different techniques. You can cut them out with your leaf dies, and you have beautiful, beautiful leaves that you can put into your projects. I will link to a video below that I did that and used the leaves in a project. So yeah, save those baby wipes. Giving that a really good dry now because that paint is wet on the top, the brown. And look at that cool um, leaf floor that it gave to my piece. I'm adding a little bit of the cheddar and a little bit of the vintage mustard to my palette there. And I thought I would go ahead and add some. Oh, I wanted to show you there. When I used that stencil, it put Shawn in the piece. So now I have Shawn's name right up there in the clouds on my mixed media piece. I thought that was really neat. It came off of the stencil. So I'm going to leave it. And Shawn's got her name right on my artwork. So that was pretty exciting. I put a little bit of that brown in there, and I'm using a makeup sponge, and I'm going over the top of my leaves on my yard there, and I'm just adding a little bit here and there where I thought it needed a little bit of breaking up with the color. So yeah, the leaves in the bottom is super, super neat. I really like how that turned out, and it's super dry, and you can see that I put that last row of bricks in and everything's dry. Now I wanted to add another layer of texture to my piece, and I grabbed out another one of my favorite stencils by Shawn Petite, and it's Shawn's Background Words, and I used that texty script um, stencil up at the top there down into the leaves, and it just added a bit of texture, dimension, and interest down there at the bottom. I'm using it with my brown archival ink and a makeup brush there, and super, super cool how it turned out. So again, using my art journal to get rid of that extra paint that I had. And in this case, it was ink. And I thought, well, let's go for it and just create a focal point for this art journal page that was coming together right in front of my very eyes. And I put that right in the center of kind of a frame that I had created with my paint from before. All right, back to the piece. Now I'm using yet another one of Shawn's stencils, and this is Pumpkin Variety. And I'm using a scrap of vintage letter. It has handwritten writing on it, and I'm just going on the inside of the two pumpkins and creating one stacked in front of the other, and I'm just using a pencil, and I will cut that out with my scissors, and you'll see what it looks like here in a moment. It's hard to see on camera there. but it's a great way to use some of your pattern paper and Shawn stencils in another way. Putting on some of my Dina Wakley's Cheddar paint. Absolutely love this color. I can't tell you enough how much I love this color. And putting it on my pumpkins, and I'm going to set that aside to dry. So my piece, some of that white gesso went down at the bottom there, and it looks like the wall is crumbling, which is fine to me. I think it's cool. Now, I was going to use that large bicycle stencil, and it just was too big. So I dug out another stencil by Shawn. Of course, I have so many. She's so generous when you're on her design team. And this one is just called Bicycle. And I chose that larger bicycle to the top of the 8 by 10 stencil. And that is what I chose for my focal point for this piece. And as I was sitting in my backyard, I have a bicycle in my flower bed, and I had a couple of pumpkins sitting in front of it, and then the bicycle leans up against the garage, and I thought, well, why don't I make it a cool brick wall? And that's how this piece came about. So I'm using my black, jet black archival ink by Ranger and another makeup brush, and I'm going ahead and making sure I have a really good impression of this stencil. And I did mask off the basket from that stencil. I just didn't want that basket there. I just didn't want to deal with it. So I thought that was going to work out just great. And look at how neat that turned out. It's all coming together here now. I can totally see it. Here's my little pumpkins. I'm going to put those down with my matte gel, and I let them dry, and now I'm using a permanent marker, and I'm going around the bike there and filling in the gaps. You know, when you have a stencil, there's those gaps that are there on your stencil. I'm just connecting all the spokes to the wheel and the spokes to the frame of the bike and going all around so that there isn't any of those blank spots. And then we're going to give this piece that brown wash. I use burnt umber and water, and the paint there is over to the right. I use Basics burnt umber paint, mix it with water, and I'm going to give this piece a beautiful wash of color, and then you will see that brick, old brick fence come to life. And it just gives everything such a warmth. I love that technique, and I thank Shawn for teaching it to me. Just adding a little water to my paint, using a soft brush, and going all over the piece. Yeah, look at that. It gets in all of those nooks and crannies, and it brings out all of that texture and dimension. Yep, I use this technique probably on almost every one of my mixed media pieces. I just love how it finishes it off. And it's so perfect with all of these warm oranges, browns, yellows, and reds. Just giving it a spray with my water and dabbing it with my soft cloth. I hope you're enjoying this blog hop that Shawn put together for you. We're all using her stencils, of course, and she's going to give away one free stencil to a lucky winner on every YouTube video that is in this blog hop. So make sure that you comment on my video below, and she will pick one winner. and it will be US only, and the cutoff date is going to be October 29th, and she's going to list the winners on Friday, October 30th. Okay, bringing in yet another stencil. I felt that that top right was just a little too sparse up there, and it needed something. It was just calling for another bit of depth and dimension. So I brought out my very favorite of Shawn's stencils, and it's called Numbers Jumble. And I thought I would use my brown archival ink in potting soil and my makeup brush. And now it brings the eye around that piece a little bit easier. It's the top right, over to the left, and then down to the bottom. So it just makes it all flow a little bit better, I thought. Yep, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And I'm really, really looking for some great comments. And I think that this blog hop is going to be great, and everybody will get wonderful inspiration from all of these fall pieces. All right, now I was trying to think of a sentiment, and the one I came up with was live in the moment. There's so much going on right now where we're all worrying about the future and oh dear, I missed the past and all of that. Well, I think that we need to just live in the moment and let things, progress as they're going to, because we're wasting our time if we're thinking about what's going to happen in the future and what was in the past, what we miss. So that's what I was thinking about when I was making this piece and trying to pick out a sentiment. These are some quote chips by Tim Holtz, and you can see I just peeled off the back because they're very thick, and I didn't want that real thick piece there. So I just peeled the cardboard off on the back, and they're very white, so I'm just putting some of that burnt umber paint on the sentiment so that it all matched together. Now for my favorite part, we're going to do some of that shading and highlighting using charcoal and framing the piece in. And I'm just putting a little bit of water there, and I'm using my brown Stabilo pencil and filling in all of those cracks from that old wall there, that brick wall. I needed to create that dark that goes in the cracks, and I'm going to use that pencil and then a soft water brush to blend that ink into the cracks, and it makes the whole piece just pop. I really like how the bricks turned out there. And you see I go around the pumpkins, I go around everything, anywhere I thought that it needed some of that brown shading. And how cool. I know that I will be using this brick stencil again for different things. I think it turned out real neat with the brown wash over it. I don't know why, but I always have to turn my piece so that it's a little crooked to shade. It's just more comfortable for me. I don't know why. So I'm going around the pumpkins and I'm putting in the definition so that we can see one pumpkin from the other with my brown Stabilo pencil. And I will use my General's 6B Extra Soft charcoal pencil also, and then I am using a double scoop gelato to go around the piece, and I am using my charcoal pencil to create all of those shadows underneath the pumpkins, underneath the bicycle, and giving the shadow from the brick wall there. And like I said, this is my favorite part of creating is all of the details and the finishing touches. Smudging that charcoal with my finger, and now it really comes to life. You can see the dimension. And again, I apologize with the angle of the piece. It's just the way that I create. Putting in that horizon line there, and underneath the brick wall, because it would be very dark under there. I think it's a cute little piece, and I will probably keep it in my craft room for inspiration, excuse me, and remind myself that we need to live in the moment. We can't keep worrying about the future. The future is going to be the future, and you know, you can't change the past. That's what the past is the past. Take in those moments that we have right now that make us happy, and rejoice on those, and focus on those. Focus on the people that we can see and be with right now. I hope everyone is staying safe, you know, doing their social distancing part, and enjoy this wonderful blog hop that Shawn has put together. I can't wait to see all of the fall pieces that we're going to have. And remember to comment so that you can get in the drawing for the free stencil. That is wonderful that she's giving that away. And also I will leave a link to my online class for creating those mixed media backgrounds, and you make 12 of the artist trading cards, and it turned out to be quite fun. So here I'm going to add the gelato to the border. I'm going to smudge that with my finger, and the piece is going to be complete. I will take it outside and I will spray it with my what is it called, polyacrylic finish, and then I will let that dry and bring it in the house, and I will use a liquid clear semi-gloss finish over the top. And I forgot that I used just a tiny little bit of my pan pastels here. I absolutely love these colors, and when I saw those pumpkins, I knew right away I was going to be using a little bit of the raw sienna and the orange for the pumpkins, and that is my pan pastels and the soft blending tools. Again, I will link everything below for you, and you have a super day. Enjoy this blog hop. Make sure you comment, and I hope that you really liked my little piece here. I think it turned out real cute. Here's a quick look at those little ATCs that you would create in my online class. Super cute, huh? Lots of different textures and techniques there, and we keep it on a ring binder so that you can refer to them in the future. Thanks for watching. Be sure to comment, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.